All right. The people have waited a while for yet another appearance on the CITIUS Mag podcast. Welcome back, Scott Fauble. How are things going with you? Now we're less than a month away, a couple weeks away. Are we in the taper phase or not yet?
No, we got a couple more days of full volume, and then bring it down with 2 weeks to go.
Nice. And everything feeling good?
Yeah. Training's been good. Body feels good. Yeah, in a good spot.
The biggest thing people were probably wondering is, do you understand the qualifying process? And I guess, what are you telling yourself at this point with a couple weeks to go? You know, the USATF changes a couple things. It doesn't make all that much of a difference. I'm gonna guess what you're gonna say, and you're just in it to win it, and that'll be hopefully more than enough to get on the team. So this whole mess about qualifying, what have you made of the whole thing?
Yeah, I looked into it over the summer. I got a good grasp of what the situation was. Um, that led me to my decision to run Berlin in the fall. Um, I have not read, or nor do I care to read, the most recent updates. Like, that's a future me problem. Like, that's not the only thing I can do right now is focus on the trials. So um if that information isn't going to serve me in the short term, I don't really feel the need to dig into it and stress about it. Like, we're gonna if we're gonna cross that bridge if we have to. And from what I've gleaned is it won't affect me anyways, because I'm not running Boston, whether I qualify for unless I'm not going to run Boston or another marathon between the trials and the Olympics, unless I have to make the Olympics. Like, if I'm on the outside looking in, I'm not going to go do that. So I guess it's just sort of just in the ether. I don't really know what the point of that is.
Yeah.
But
So
but again, I haven't looked into it at all, so I might be way off on my interpretation of reading a couple tweets here or there.
yeah, that's what I was also thinking. It's sort of like everyone's been talking about your particular world ranking in the last
Yeah.
couple weeks going into Houston. If this happens, Fob will move up or move down based off this stuff. You have not paid all that much attention to it.
I know I'm about 68th in the world rankings, and I know that there's a big difference, a big drop off between me and 80th. But we obviously need to survive, uh, like Rotterdam, Hamburg, Seville, Boston, London, Prague,
Yeah. Which are
Tokyo.
fast ones in the spring that could lead to more
Yeah.
people qualifying.
Um, I think one thing everyone forgets about is the trials are almost always quick. Even in Atlanta, when it was 30-mile-per-hour winds on a course where you gained and lost 1,800 feet of elevation, Jake Riley ran 2:10. Unless this course is, or unless the day we get is 80 degrees and 70% humidity, it's probably not going to be an issue from a 211 standpoint, 211:30 standpoint. Um, so, you know, it's all, we'll make the decision tree has not gotten to the point where we've got to make any choices at this point. So it's just getting ready for the trials. And, um, I think if I run as well as I can there, then that will take care of it.
I've been seeing all the treadmill footage and the attempts to make it hot in the room. I guess take us through a little bit of your training. What have you been doing in those particular instances, and then how much of it, have you been just normal runs and workouts? Like, what has been your training structure in this build look like?
Yeah. We've been doing a lot of stuff on the treadmill, particularly some threshold workouts. Um, when's this coming out?
I could push it to next week.
All right. Well, I just don't want to give it anything away because I feel like we've done it well. But I usually don't care about that, but I do feel like we have a competitive advantage here. Um, but at that point, it'll be too close for anyone to do anything about it. But we've been doing our hot threshold workouts in the gym. We've been able to get it up to, you know, 80 to 85 degrees and about 60% humidity by the end of the workout. And we're tracking things with heart rate and like a core body temperature. So we've had a good check on our effort. And then, so we've been getting those sessions in. And then, like once or twice a week on one of my doubles, I'll crank up the temperature in the gym and do like 45 minutes on the treadmill and then get straight into like a sauna blanket, which is like basically a heated sleeping bag. And I wear like one of those like old school sauna suits in the sauna blanket. So end up getting about 90 minutes of heat stress. And between those two things, it ends up being 2 to 3 times a week. And I'll probably do one or two extra sessions in the last couple of weeks here before just to keep the adaptations up. And we've
How
seen good progress. Like, so if you can track the core body temperature, like, um, it takes me like longer and longer to get into the like 101, 102 degree body temperature range, which is a good sign. And just anecdotally, like I'm sweating way more. I feel more comfortable when it gets hot. And yeah,
so when all of this has been devised, like what is it preparing for? Is it just the worst case scenario of how hot it could be, or you know, ideally, when Joe is saying, "All right, we're doing this for this reason," what is the race that you're envisioning that all this preparation is going into?
I think you need to prepare for, well, it's two things, right? Like, I don't think, um, we did like a little camp at Nike where they talked about like heat adaptation and nutrition and some other things as well. And like the way to get the best heat adaptations is to get your body temp into the 101s for a prolonged period of time. Uh, and so we have to get it up that high just to see the most adaptation. Um, and uh, yeah, so that's really what the impetus is coming from. Like we're preparing, we're training to improve fitness, not necessarily like because we think those will be the conditions in the race. But I do think we've been able to train in conditions like probably worse than what we'll see in Orlando. Um, Especially because like in the gym, we don't have the fans going when we have the heat on. So with no like moving air, you feel much hotter than um, you would if you were moving through air and you were getting some evaporation.
Wow. So that Nike, I guess, call or meeting that you're part of, is that you with some of your biggest competitors, or was it pretty tailored to just you?
Yeah, it was 3 days on the Nike campus a couple months ago. And it was me and Galen and Connor and Kira and Nell was there and Gabby Ruker was there, and then the Dreamweavers program, which is
Mhm.
like a group of women that they supported to kind of get to the Olympic trials, as well as a few uh, like Nike staffers who have hit the trial standard and will be running as well. They got all that information as well.
How much new stuff were you learning there? Because I mean, in the past, I remember NAZ days, like you guys went on, you just layered up and would go for runs. This is just it feels more scientific.
Yeah, yeah, and it was led by the Brett Kirby and
Mhm.
his group up there, and Brett Kirby and Brad Win, and they're the guys who designed like the sub 2 attempt and have done a bunch of stuff and do testing all the time with athletes and like just science dudes. So they gave us their perspectives of it, and it came from like a very science centric perspective. Like these are the trials that have been done to lead to these adaptations. So we kind of took those results and like implemented them to training where like in the scientific studies it's like we're actually training just to see heat adaptations, and what we're training for and as you get ready for the Olympic trials is to run a marathon in the heat, which is sort of different. um, because if all you care about is getting ready for the heat, like you can just be in a sauna for a lot of time, but that doesn't necessarily complement doing the actual work to get ready for the marathon part of it, which is the more important part of it.
Before Boston, I guess the big thing that you and Emma talked about was like the lactate testing and just like what the numbers told you. What are the testing numbers indicating right now?
Um, well, it's a little bit less predictive given the heat. Um, it's most like we've been using sort of the data mostly to keep like a speed limit on it. Because if you think about like if we want to be doing, let's say 2 mile reps at half marathon effort, well, like if it's 80 degrees and like if it's at sea level and 40 degrees, I kind of know that's like, 440 pace or 435 pace. But if it's at 5,000 feet, 80 degrees, 60% humidity, like all those conversions, like I don't know how many seconds that is. So if we're just looking at heart rate and we want to be 170s, that's kind of been our um the use of those is not necessarily predictive, but it's for just to make sure we're not like frying ourselves and we're kind of staying in the zones we want to stay in. Because I think a lot of people will have trained where they just crank up the heat and try to run the paces that they normally run. And now you're kind of doing a different workout because you're not going to hit the zones you want to hit because you're just increasing the stress. Um, so yeah, we've mostly been using like the data as a limit.
So with all of this training, you're doing it solo, not all that different from the build up towards, Berlin or Boston before that. I guess you did have, Emma, preparing for a marathon or Dom as well. But does it ever get lonely? I mean, like for you to be doing all this work by yourself?
No, it doesn't get lonely when I'm in Boulder. Um, I'd still live in Portland for most of the year, and then it gets lonely sometimes. But I can do my like easy running with a lot of the ladies, the boss ladies, and if we're in the gym, like Joe's there, or I mean, Joe's almost always there, or Nick is there, or some of the other women are on the treadmills. So I wouldn't say it gets lonely. Really, the only time I'm like completely alone is long runs, and that's fine. I can be alone for 2.5 hours at a time. That's not that big of a deal.
It sounds more like a question for Joe because of how big the team already is, but has there ever been, a consideration for a training partner for you? Is that something you would want?
I'm open to it if it's the right person. I mean, I don't um, feel like that's my call necessarily to make. I'm not recruiting anyone, but if someone came and it would be like a good fit chemistry wise and they wanted to join the team, like I'm good with it. I don't really care. Um, yeah, I'm not worried about it either way.
We didn't chat on the podcast after Berlin, but let's kind of unpack a little bit about that and just explain to people what exactly happened there. You were fit going into the race, you hit the halfway point, 63:45, made it to 30K, and then stepped off dealing with like some stomach issues. Were you able to figure out exactly kind of like what happened and then where do things go from there with just kind of that fitness build where you were on 207 pace for a lot of it?
Yeah, I was feeling really good through 25K as well. So it was pretty disappointing to not be able to finish. But I think we got down to the reason I had to drop out because so at those who don't know, at 29K, I got like a side ache, stopped real quick to try to stretch it out. I was still on 207 high, 208 low pace, feeling good other than the side ache. Uh, got going again, immediately threw up. And then I tried to get going again because I was like, okay, like I can still salvage the 211:30. And my like hamstrings and glutes cramped immediately. And like I could barely walk. And so I just sat down on the curb and waited for, one of the cars to take me to the finish line. So it was very disappointing, but ultimately like I didn't drop out because of my fitness and I wasn't like hurt. So if it was kind of best case scenario for having to drop out, obviously that's not what you want. especially like traveling that far. And Joe traveled to Berlin, and my wife was there, and my agent was there, and it's like that just sucks to feel like these people flew all the way to Berlin, and you couldn't get it done. Obviously, that's not how they felt. They were supportive and understanding, but that's sort of how I felt. I feel like what happened was I previously I was taking like one gel every 10K. So I'd go start 10K, 20K, 30K. Um, and in the Berlin buildup, we were trying to get more and more carbs on board. So that, there's just feel like it would be helpful. And so I didn't space out the gels, I think, correctly. And I took too many in too short of a time, and the body kind of rejected it. So I've worked with the people at Nike. I've been experimenting with some other products, and experimenting with different like fueling strategies, both before the race and in the race. And I feel like we're a lot more dialed now, and I can get more carbs in a more sustainable way. Yeah, and the tables at Berlin are really weird, where like they have a million of them, so you're not set on every 5K. So I ended up having like 9K, 16K, 22K, 27K, and then threw up. So that's like as much as I was taking in the previous marathons, all in like less than 90 minutes, you know? And I just those three back to back to back kind of they weren't staying down. They came up. So um we figured out a way to get more carbs in stretched over the whole race a little bit better.
Nice. Then after the race, like, did any part of you want to like potentially turn it around and go for another one? I know you had like Bandon Dunes on the calendar and some golfing to do, but there was I went back and I looked at like comments on the Instagram. It's like, well, then you're risking going into the trials without the standard or whatever it might have been. But for you, I don't know. Like, did the body feel like you could have potentially chased another marathon?
Maybe, maybe, but not Chicago. Wouldn't have been ready for Chicago. Um, like 30K is still like 30K at under 208 pace is still really hard on the body. It's still like quite the toll, and plus you've got um, transatlantic travel, and you have just tapered. So do you pick it up? Like you still need to run enough to callus the body, but you've just done the hardest workout of a build, and like frankly gone harder than you're supposed to in a build. So um I probably could have, like, if it would have been make or break, like this gets me into the Olympics or this doesn't, I probably could have turned it around for, I mean, I definitely could have turned it around for like a Valencia or
Yeah, but then you risk
maybe,
Orlando, right?
yeah, we're cutting into preparation for Orlando. So, um, yeah, I mean, I even probably could have been ready by New York, but that doesn't like really do me any favors. And at that point, it was like we were kind of like, or I was like, I would rather go into the Orlando build feeling fresh than go into the Orlando build tired. Maybe we improved our situation a little bit, but ultimately, like, ultimately my ranking is not bad. It's not horrible. And we felt like we were in a good enough spot um, where we can just figure it out at the trials.
Before Boston, you did the US Half Marathon Championships, nothing before Berlin. It is, very much Joe's kind of approach with both you and Emma. It's just like, all right, it's all in on the marathons. No more of these like USATF road race championship off distances sprinkled along the way. For this Orlando build, do you feel good, I guess, about like going in with like no solid sort of temperature check, from a race?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I haven't loved racing in buildups before. There are some reasons to do it. Before Boston, uh, we wanted to put a race in the calendar so that we could be sure to do some sort of like under pace work a little bit earlier in the build, and having a race in the calendar meant we had to do it. But that was sort of an anomaly. And in the past, we haven't done a ton of racing leading up to marathons, and yeah, it's just not that important to us. And um, I don't feel like I need it anymore. And I would rather just stay in Boulder and train and not have those distractions.
Was it hard for you, I guess, like when you see Emma run Chicago, comes off of it hurt, have to pull out of the trials? I mean, now it's like this is a teammate you spent like 2 years with. I guess like how did you process that news?
Yeah, I mean, I was really bummed for her. Obviously, like I think she's shown over the last few years that she would have been a favorite to make the team. The Olympics only come around every 4 years. I guess from my perspective, I was kind of thinking about it like obviously the thing I'm mainly thinking about is being sad for Emma, but like I get why this is the case. Like I get why uh we will be remembered for the Olympics that we make and how many teams you make, and that's sort of a binary thing. That's how people um remember people who are in sports, like Charles Barkley never won a championship. Dan Marino never won a championship, and that's sort of the moniker that goes with them. And that's fine. I'm not begrudging that, but I think that when you look at yourself as an athlete, or like really anyone who's in kind of a spotlight where there's a binary metric like that, you don't think of yourself in those terms, or at least I don't think that it's good to think about yourself in those terms. Um, I think Bates has had like if Bates's career for some freak reason ended now, like she would have had an incredible career, like something that anyone should be proud of. And whether or not she makes the Olympics doesn't really change that in my mind, and I don't think it should change that in her mind. And I think for the people in this sport who are the healthiest and who are in it for the longest, like those failures don't I'm trying to avoid the cliche of like those failures don't define you, but they're not like you don't become it becomes like a side part of you as opposed to who you are, which I guess is exactly to say the same thing as saying they don't define you.
Uh,
So maybe I'm not eloquent enough to get what I'm saying across, but I think that's what I think.
one thing that sticks out too about just how different you've sort of been in this approach to Orlando is just how quiet you've been, at least like on
Yeah.
Instagram. We know LeBron, other athletes, they go zero dark 30 on people on social media. First off, we miss you and we miss all of the updates. But what have been the benefits of doing that and being, I guess, purposeful about just literally blocking out all of the noise? You still get a healthy dose of it in a group chat that you're in with me and with Kyle, and that's where you get your little bits of, oh, what's the latest start time controversy and all that stuff. But you've
Yeah.
gone dark on it. Also, we put out a memo saying like, all right, any trials talk, we got to kind of move to another place now because it's getting a little close to the race. So we're thinking about you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been like um, that purposeful. It's just like I don't, I don't really like feel the need to share a bunch of stuff, you know?
You've
Real
got a
G's
book
move
out
in
there.
silence.
You're an
That's true.
author.
Yeah, I've been pretty online. Real G's move in silence like lasagna has sort of been what I keep telling myself of late. It's like let's just do the work. Let's just be as ready as we can on race day. Um, let's come in feeling good about myself. Like, I don't want to feel like I have to prove anything on a regular basis. Uh, I'm just training to be ready on February 3rd, and good or bad, like I'll tell you about stuff afterwards. But uh, in the lead up, I've found kind of like it's a little less stressful to just be quiet.
In the build up to Boston last year, you said you never looked at the starting list to see like who was in the field. This time around, you obviously don't have to do that because you know who's an American, who's qualified, and there's no surprises. But actually, like, how do you size up the competition for this one? On the women's side, like I look at it and I think there's maybe 5 or 6 women with a real strong chance of making this team. Yeah, of course, like the field is so much bigger. On the men's side, with various variables and scenarios in play, you're among the top contenders. How many other guys do you put into that, into that category?
Mm, I don't think you can make a tier list that well for the Olympic trials. Like historically, there's always been someone who runs the race of their life at the Olympic trials. Last time it was Jake. Before that, it was Jared. Brian Sell comes to mind. Like, there's always someone who comes out of nowhere. So if you're going to tier the list, like, you're going to be wrong. Like, someone's going to come up from tier three and make the team probably. I don't think that it's that important for me personally to steer it or to like think about who people are or what people are doing. I have my opinions about a lot of different runners. I'm not going to share them all here. Um, and I think that it will take a very good race to make the team. I don't think I'm in a spot where I need it to be the race of my life. And I don't feel like I'm putting the pressure on myself or training like this is a do or die. We need to take a bunch of chances. So yeah, I think we've trained the same way we've trained for Boston and New York and Boston and Berlin. And I haven't lost to an American in like 2 years, other than dropping out of Berlin, which counts. It counts. I did lose to some Americans there, um, but other than that, it's been a while. So I feel good about where I'm at. Everyone else is going to bring their A game. I'm going to have to bring my A game, and I'm going to have to race to win. I don't think you race to get top three. I think you have to race to win, and the top three will be a consolation prize if you race aggressively and fearlessly.
All right, I'll refrain then from running through some hypotheticals of like, oh, if this person goes, like, what are you gonna do? Because I could tell like that's not the sort of like mental exercise you want to try and play around with. But one of the things that you wrote also, I'm going back to before Boston because it did kind of give me a good glimpse into sort of the mental headspace you were in that has benefited you at these bigger races over the last like 2 years. But one thing you said was like doing the work doesn't have to be a grind. I worked really hard, just as hard, if not harder than before the spring. How about this time? Like, have you been working even harder than that?
No, I was sort of thinking about that the other day. Like, um, I think it's easy to say like I've worked harder than I've ever worked before, but like I don't feel like I've ever really gone into a race feeling like I left something on the table. Like our process is really good. Like we worked really hard for Boston. Before that, we worked really hard for New York. Before that, we worked really hard for Boston. And we're just gonna work really hard. We're gonna make the right choices. Like, you know, just I don't feel like I've held anything back in previous builds. So if I can live up to the standard that I find acceptable and the standard that I've set for myself in the past, like that's probably going to be good. I've been pretty good for a while. So barring like other than a couple blips, had a lot of good races. So if I feel good about where I'm at, and if I feel like in the past, maybe I've tried to convince myself that I feel good about where I'm at. But if I authentically feel good about where I'm at, then that's great. Like I'll be happy with that.
The next line in that caption was, but I also had the most fun I've had in a block. How about this time?
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Even
been
what
up there.
even while you're doing I guess all this sauna stuff, like is that a part of it, like new fun, or maybe not in the moment, but you're just like, all right, this is different.
Yeah, but even in the moment, it's still fun. Um, like not fun like going to the bar with your friends and having a great night, but fun like I feel like I'm doing something special. Like that's fun too. Like after my like hot doubles, right? I'm the last one in the gym. It's like usually dark when I get finished up and when I shower and stuff like that, and I'm driving home, and it's like that feeling of being the last one out of the gym, driving home in the dark, like really sort of feeling like you went through a hardship despite like I lay in a hot blanket and watch TV for 45 minutes. Like it's not that hard. Like I didn't work a 12-hour shift. Um, I think that can still be that's fun too. Feeling like you're doing something special, feeling like you're working towards something like that is fun. And not everything has to be a sacrifice, and not everything has to suck to be good on the other side. Which like I think 5 years ago, my like cynical self would call me a pussy for saying that, but that is how I feel like right now. It doesn't have to suck to be good.
You're a man of great TV and movie taste. So when you do have to watch, something for 45 minutes, what have you been watching recently?
Um, well, I've been working. I never watched Entourage before, so I'm watching Entourage all the way through right now. Aisha Lear got me started on that. Um, I'm a big Jack Reacher fan, so I've been keeping up with that on Amazon. Um, let's see. We watched the Mission Impossible recently. And then the NBA play or the NFL playoffs have been pretty good too the last few days. It's been like 0 degrees in Boulder and snowy, so a lot of time on the treadmill, watching my parlays lose.
Uh, so I guess is a little part of this buildup. Not necessarily like selfish in the sense where like the team boss gym turns into this really hot room. There's obviously other people who have to use the sauna as well. Did people walk in after one of your sessions and be like, "Oh man, it is so hot in here"? It's because it was after your turn, or how have you guys balanced that side of things? Where it's like, all right, this room is just going to be hot through February.
Yeah. Well, it's really only hot when I'm like when we're doing a workout. We don't keep it 80 degrees like 24 hours a day.
Okay.
Um, so we just tell like we've been lucky for the most part. We've had really good weather, so we haven't been forced to kind of use the treadmills all day. Um, so not many people have been subjected to the hot boy hours, but yeah, we've shared some hot boy doubles with some people, and I think they get it. Like it's not. I don't feel like anyone feels like it's a sacrifice. Everyone knows it's going to be hot in or probably going to be hot and humid in Orlando, and we've got a lot of really like driven type A people on the team who would do like the same thing or more if they were in my position. So I don't think there's been any like animosity about it. And then in terms of like sharing the sauna blankie, we don't do that. That's gross. That is gross to share a sauna blanket where you're just sweating your face off for 45 minutes at a time. No, no, no. Everyone has their own. If you've got a sauna blankie, it's your sauna blankie. We're not sharing that shit.
Amazing. Um, One thing you said uh, in this interview with Kyle almost 2 years ago that stayed with me is I think the key is having more faith in myself now than I've had in my career. So it's like when you have that and find that, how do you then build upon that? Like I know race results help because it helps sort of validate everything, but how do you build that faith within yourself?
That's a good question. I think part of it is innate. Part of it is innate. I'm a confident guy. Uh, I would say the faith in myself comes a lot. It comes from the work. Not necessarily the results so much. Like Berlin was a horrible result, but that didn't shake my confidence. Um, but I think there's a difference between like I think you just have to have conviction in the work, right? Like you can't be not sure if the work is going to be good. You have to really believe 100% that I'm doing the right work for me and we're doing it at the right times and we're doing it in the right ways. And I think that's where my faith comes from. And ultimately, like when you lose that, you have to make a change. Like I think before I left NAZ Elite, I reached out to a number of people just to get their like opinions on things. And one of them was one person I reached out to was Marielle Hall. And she was like, the most important thing you can have is conviction. And when you lose your conviction, the sport takes too much energy and it's too hard to make up for not believing in the work you're doing. And once I felt like I needed to make a change in terms of the work I was doing, you have to. If you're not 100% in, you might as well be 100% out. And being 100% in, you know, comes from work, it comes from results, it comes from just feeling like I'm playing with a full deck of cards.
Yeah. So you dropped a Candace Parker quote on Instagram once, and has there been anyone else who recently has said something? I mean, that was fairly deep that has resonated with you, not to preemptively have you burn a future Instagram caption on the podcast.
Yeah, after Berlin, our assistant coach Nick Harris texted me. I don't forget the exact quote or who said it. I think it was some sort of Eastern proverb, but like the only thing you're guaranteed is the opportunity to do the work. You're not guaranteed any results. Um, you're not owed anything. So I guess that's sort of been something that's stuck with me is like um, not feeling like entitled to being one of the top three guys in the trials and making the team. Like, and also um, just feeling like the only thing I have control over is the work is really, I think, what has been sort of in my head a lot.
No, I think that's perfect. All right, final questions. We still get the occasional burrito update or rating on Twitter every now and then. Has consumption changed all that much in this marathon build?
Uh, I would say consumption's certainly not at its all-time high, but it's still high. Like I'm still a burrito guy. We've been moving a little quieter. I feel like it's been I like to still like to shout it out if there's like a really good burrito that um deserves mention, it deserves honor, it deserves recognition. Um, and frankly, we've had a lot of 10 out of 10s, 11 out of 10s, 12 out of 10s, and I don't feel like I need to break my silence for an 11 out of 10. Like when after the trials, when we find a 14 out of 10, a 15 out of 10, like it'll be on blast. Y'all know.
So have you scouted any spots potentially for Orlando? Or does
Oh,
that happen? Does that
not
happen
in
just kind of
Orlando.
like
Yeah, it
after?
has to happen naturally. If I make it all the way back to Portland before I find a good spot, I know where like I can stay strapped in Portland. Like I know where to go. Beto's, La Panaderia, uh, Tienda Santa Cruz, Burrito Express, King Burrito, Boulevard Tacos. Like we can find a 14 out of 10 uh, in Portland if we need to. Like that's sort of last case scenario.
Perfect. All right, final question. How much inspiration are you taking away from this dude who ran 2:59:12 at the Houston Marathon this weekend?
Oh, it's huge, man. It's huge. It's impossible is nothing.
I just love the fact that we had people glued to their tracker, and yeah, the reception to it has been really nice, but just the odd mix of like professional runners being happy for me, and I'm like, you guys could do this like as it's a cakewalk for you guys, but for me it took a while. So I'm glad it's finally done, and I'm hoping you get your bright shining moment in Orlando. So
Well, let's hear about it. Like don't leave everyone hanging. Like what were
I
your
just
like
did a whole recap podcast with Allie. I let her take the reins and like guest host. I know I know you wanted to do that, but no, it was good. I, banked a little time and let myself die a little bit at the end, and
that's
maybe
a
not the smartest
strategy.
approach. Yeah. Positive split this one. But it was good. That celebration at the end, not rehearsed, was definitely just pure emotion exiting my
Hell yeah.
body. But no, yeah, now I can. That's all training for, you know, Orlando shakeout jogs and whatever might be happening that weekend.
For
But
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Let's play a game then. Would you rather Like, let's say you hadn't run sub 3. Like, would you rather have a sub 3 or a sub 5?
Oh, this is a good question. You know, I think sub five.
I think that's right.
Because sub five, if I do sub five, it would give me the confidence I know I could probably break three later on. I feel like I've fallen short more publicly in the sub five attempts. Like
Mhm. And
marathons,
it's
it's only been a couple times, and I haven't
yeah,
really blown up and had too many big stinkers. But with the mile, like, yeah, the Gladwell mile
it was rough, dude.
was way off. I mean,
Yeah.
that one was billed as not just a duel, but also a sub five attempt. That sub five attempt went out the window the first 200 meters, and so um, I think I'm
Yeah, I
excited
was
to get back on the track and give that one a crack next.
sure. Um, Looking back at your previous sub 3 attempts, like what do you think you did wrong previously?
I just think it's New York is so
Yeah.
different of like a thing. It's like a big thing to do than Houston that like you don't have to go all the way out to Staten Island to start
Hmm.
the race and then just hang out there for a bit. Like this one, yeah, I left my hotel at 6 o'clock, was in the corral by 6:45 and off and going by, at 7. So it was flat. It was easy. Until it wasn't at the end. But no, I mean you've run the half there. They do a great job hosting that race, and it's not the most scenic or the biggest crowd support, but if you're there on a mission to run fast, it's the perfect place to get it done.
Yeah. Uh, no, I agree. I think Boston and New York are like by far the best experiences of a marathon. But if you want to like run a fast time, like you should not leave to go to the start line 4 hours before your race and just sit around. Like you should just like running Chicago or Houston or like um trying to think of another one in the States, like grandma's where you can just roll up and
Yeah.
then go is way better. It's way better.
Not to, compare the two of us and what we do at major marathons to be all that similar, but like for you guys going to a press conference, going to sponsor, expo booth appearances or, all this kind of stuff. Us like doing preview shows or podcasts or attending the press conferences, like that's a lot of time on feet. So like, this
Yeah,
time around there was none of that. And I think that played a big role in helping me get to the starting line relaxed and just on a mission. It was a business trip.
for sure.
I put it on the CITIUS Mag Amex,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, that's what like you're justifying it. Like that Instagram post is doing numbies.
Hey, it's might be doing the best numbies of the whole weekend. Some people may say, yeah. All right, Scott. I appreciate you jumping on and doing this. And I'm excited to see you in Orlando. All this work you've been putting in the shadows without any Instagram posts. I know it's going to be good and it's going to pay off in the end.
Thanks, man. Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
I have been shocked and disappointed that no marathoner from like a hot climate has posted an Instagram with the caption of like, I was born in the shadows, you merely adopted it. Like that Bane quote is literally perfect if you're a marathoner who was like born in Florida or Texas. Like, what are we doing here if we're not even using, you know?
Oh man, it's the biggest missed opportunity that's been out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm still got a couple more weeks. I wonder who's. It's definitely not gonna be Galen. Galen's not on Instagram or anything like that. So I'm
No,
curious.
and we really need, it needs to be someone who grew up in a hot weather climate, Georgia, Florida, the South, Texas, like
Hey, I mean,
even
Kenya, but then became an American. That counts too.
sure
Yeah.
that does. Yeah, if it's hot and humid enough, then I think, someone's gotta do it. Someone's gotta do it. And it can't be me. It can't be
Yeah.
me. I adopted it. So yeah, like I'd love to see that Instagram caption. I thought of that the other day, and
It's
it's
up there
just a
for the taking.
disgrace. It's a
Yeah.
disgrace, yeah, that no one's used it.